Hey guys, it's Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds, and today I am hanging out with Lysa Chen. You are slated to be the next one of the next community managers for Adventure Leagues. I don't actually know if there's more than one, right? It's
Yes.
multiple.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's Alan Patrick, who is the current associate community manager, will be taking over the straight community manager role for Robert Aducci.
okay, cool. So you got that going on. Guild Adept. You've been writing over at the DMs Guild for the past year, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. So you have a lot of cool things, and you're just talking about being an event organizer and putting together things called epics. And I've heard that term thrown around, but I don't actually know what it means.
You've never played an epic?
I don't think I have.
The word does them justice. They're really, really cool. So an epic is sort of like the WoW equivalent would be a raid. So you have all of your different tables, which are sort of like different squadrons, and you all are going against this like legendary bad guy all together. Epics are organized sort of differently, but basically you're all doing this giant raid, and the different things the tables do can affect what happens at your table. If someone succeeds at something, it might like unlock more quests. The big bad can like travel around to different tables. One epic I ran, I had the opportunity to launch a dragon harpoon at a player and did like 200 damage. And so the entire room, everyone's like starting to panic. Sometimes epics will have like a team leader, and then they come together and they're like all strategizing and saying, well, like my table is all warriors, so we should get to do like any combat things. And really, really cool. It's like D&D on this whole other level, and then everyone wants to be the person who actually does the killing blow to the big bad. Um, they're they're really, really fun. Really fun.
Of course, who wouldn't want to be the one to do the killing blow? So you
Yeah.
said dragon harpoon. What exactly is a dragon harpoon?
Well, that particular epic was the Arc of the Mountain, and it all takes place on flying ships. And so my flying ship had this giant harpoon meant to take down a flying dragon, but instead I targeted this poor little tier 3 cleric. Yeah,
So you said over 200 damage. That's a kill. That's got to be a kill.
yeah, no, he died. He died. Luckily, there was someone at his party who could resurrect him, and he took it like a champ. Um, but when I played it at DexCon in New Jersey, it hit someone. I don't know if it did max damage or not as much damage, but he had like 2 hit points left, and he just got up and was like beating his chest and like roaring at the admin. He was like so pumped up.
Oh man, that's when you need a goblin to just come up and backstab him. A little insult
Yeah,
to
that'd be
injury.
awesome.
I don't know, cocky players. Sometimes you
Oh
gotta take them
yeah,
down.
I don't know. If I survived 200 damage, I might do that. Yeah, bring whatever you got.
Yeah.
Not right now, though, for
Right,
sure.
yeah, a little bit later, please. Let me take a nap first.
Yeah.
Awesome. So what is the first adventure you wrote for DM's Guild?
The first adventure I wrote, let's see. So I was writing a bunch of things simultaneously. The first one to hit the Dungeon Masters Guild, though, was Ruins of Hisari, which is an expansion adventure to Tomb of Annihilation.
Cool. And as always, guys, there are links in the description, and that's actually one of them. So you guys can check that out at your leisure. Uh, how long have you been gaming?
Let's see. I used to be really into MMOs, but I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons for just about, I guess now it's 2.5 years.
Oh, nice. Fresh meat.
Yeah, new five. So 5e is the only version I've played. I really wanted to play in high school, but I didn't know anybody who played. And I went on the Wikipedia page, and it just looked really, really, really complicated. So I was like, maybe this isn't for me. And I didn't. But then 2.5 years ago, I watched Critical Role, and it looked so fun. And I felt like I got a good sense of the rules. So I got a player's handbook, read it cover to cover, and went to my friendly local game store.
D&D is for everyone. You just have to get in there. And I guess that is one of the problems too. Is like the game is kind of intimidating if you overthink when you overthink it. But and that's so awesome. Like nowadays we have all these streamers out there, especially Critical Role, showing people having fun, and it helps people kind of like break the ice and get into it.
Oh my god, I love streams. So I do run like a weekly Adventurers League night, and this past year we just had so many people who happened to watch Critical Role or Dice Camera Action, and saw Dungeons and Dragons, really enjoyed watching it being played, but none of their friends actually knew how to play. Um, but they felt like they had some sense. So it made it like so much more approachable. And they'd come into AL so that one of them could learn how to play. And then they felt comfortable DMing and doing like a home game for their friends.
Cool. There's a question from Retro Kung Fu in the chat there. So, and you would actually know much better than I, but I'm pretty sure he wants to know about how do you submit material to get published for D&D. In the DMs Guild, and even Drive Through RPG, anybody can. All you do is upload it, essentially, and follow whatever rules and guidelines they have in place.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like anyone can publish on the Dungeon Masters Guild. If you're not sure how to get started, James Introcaso on his blog, World Builder, actually, I think recently, maybe the past month, did a post about how to get started publishing on DM's Guild. And the guild itself has some good materials. Like there's a template that you can search for on there, so you have an adventure template. Um, a friend of mine just published her first adventure, Mazmataz, published Christmas Fae, and she used the Dungeon Masters Guild template and found that really helpful.
So I'm sitting here and I'm listening to your story so far and thinking about it. Like you just essentially got into D&D and you've already become a huge champion for the hobby, and you're doing tons of stuff within the niche. I find that really cool and inspiring. That
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm get really enthusiastic about the things that I like, and I'm kind of intense. So I loved D&D so much. I started playing when I was taking a year off from work. I just left a corporate job to like find myself for a year, and decided to play D&D just to spend some time. And I was sort of in like this dark, really unsure place in my life, and playing D&D and meeting the people who played it and getting to like role play these really badass characters gave me all of this confidence, kind of rejogged my creativity, and everything that I have in my life now is what it's because I found the game like completely. It saved my life. So when I found Adventurers League, I just fell in love with it and its ability to bring people into the game, and just completely threw myself into just making that happen more in my local community.
so will you go back to the corporate world, or are you going to find a way to make D&D your life?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I'll never say never. Um, like if there was a way to do like D&D full time in an office, I would probably jump on that. But right now, I actually daylight as a floral designer, and then I freelance write, and I'm doing the DM's Guild Adept thing. And I'm finding that for myself personally, doing all of these different creative ventures um, actually works out really well for me. Like uh, if I want to like just keep my creative muscles going, but I don't feel like writing, I can go design flowers during the day. So it kind of helps.
So when do we get to see you merge the two together?
People ask that, and when I started floral designing, all my D&D friends were like, "Yeah, you've got to play a druid now," but I can't. I I have such a hard time playing spellcasters who have to prep their spells every day. I usually play a sorcerer and I'm like very careful. I'm like planning my spells for the next few levels that I'm going to get. And if I had to do that every day, I would just be so stressed out. My hair would be like all like this, all like frazzled.
Oh no,
Um,
you misunderstand. I want to see D&D inspired floral designs.
oh, cool. Yeah, you could like carve like an ampersand out of floral foam and like stick a bunch of red roses in it. That would be really cool.
My
Yeah, if I had that, yeah.
my partner Ted, before we started Nerdarchy years ago, they had done a fantasy themed garden. So it was all like it was just like everything was had like fantasy like names. I don't even remember what they were. I do not really garden, but yeah, him and his wife had done it, and they had themed everything. There was some kind of goblin planter flower and dragon this or that, and it was how they kind of put it together.
That's so cool. That's like the sort of garden fairies would live in.
Yeah, I think that's what they're going for. So every once in a while, I'm going to pop in and out of the chat to see what's going on there. And if you ever see me, if I ever have a lost look on my face, it's probably because I'm reading something in the chat.
Yeah, okay.
So we have a question from Avadu. What do you do with a player who is terrible at rolling? And I mean terrible to the point you feel sorry for him or her. Mostly laugh? No, I don't know.
Oh, like they roll and it's just like ones all day.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, poor thing. I would probably mostly laugh. But then I think I would use that as an excuse to remember that I can always give out inspiration. Especially if I feel like they're being a champ with their bad rolls. Or maybe I'd be like, okay, you rolled another one. Describe to me how much you epically fail and like give them a chance to like role play a little bit and then be like, okay, that was really good. Here's inspiration for next.
That's actually a great idea. And that's one of the fun things about, you know, tabletop RPGs, D&D, is sometimes those epic fails. And it is a lot more fun when the player really, gets involved and just kind of owns it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's part of the game, so you might as well embrace it.
So Zareth Gaming is one of our regulars. So my group is taking a break from our regular stream adventures and thinking about taking a break every now and again with Adventures League. Other than filling out log sheets, what are the rules for streaming Adventures League?
Oh, well, I don't think there are any particular rules for streaming. You can look up the player's guide on the DM's Guild, and that'll give you rules for creating characters. It's mostly like the player's handbook, but there's certain rules like you can only use the player's handbook and one other resource. Or instead of rolling for your hit points, you'll always take the average. Little things like that, just to make sure everyone's on a level playing field. Aside from that, nothing special for streaming. There are actually a lot of people who play Adventurers League online. There's even online cons now, which I think is like the coolest thing ever because there's so many people who just don't have a really local community. And I think like recently there was one, I think it's called Ethereal Couch Con, which is just a really cool name. So
Ethereal CouchCon. I like that. I'm digging.
yeah.
So this question always comes up. It was just a matter of time. I was actually going to ask it anyway because I just knew at least one person would ask, if not more. And so Jacob wants to know: do you have a favorite class race combo in 5e?
Oh, I really like playing tiefling sorcerers. I love meta magic and trying to use it in really creative ways. It also makes me feel like a really powerful badass since I can like twin haste, or basically they're the only class that can twin like concentrate on two spells. And I like playing spellcasters and the creativity that comes with that. And as a sorcerer, you know your spells, so I only have to pick them once. And I think tieflings are really cool. flavor wise. And like you're always like a little bit of an outcast, and I bet as a bit of like a social misfit that appeals to me. Recently though, I've been playing a Yuan-ti bard. And bards are really fun too, especially lore bards. And Yuan-ti are really fun to role play. And
Yanti
I've
are
always played a
strong
nice,
too.
yeah.
Are they? So
Yeah, no, go ahead.
are they allowed in the AL?
They are. So that could be your +1 resource. You could do the player's handbook and Volo's guide. So basically, you could be a Yuan-ti, but only a class in the core player's handbook. Yuan-ti are really strong. They might be, I don't know, like a little bit too strong. I know sometimes I get looks around the table when it's like, oh, is this a magical spell effect? I roll with advantage then. Or, oh, it's poison. I eat it.
Well, in those guys, they're in the section that says these may not be balanced, right? They're not one of the main ones, if I remember correctly. They didn't get
I guess
their own write-up.
I didn't realize that they were in like a separate.
Yeah, like the goblins,
thing.
the bugbear, the hobgoblin. They're all like, hey, here are some other options, but these may not be balanced in comparison. And they're the only ones that get some of them get minuses too. To their
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, the orc. My boyfriend loves like one of his main characters that he plays is an orc named Hawkdriver Mazugalak. And when a full orc came out, he was so excited. And then he saw that he got a -2 to intelligence, which is a stereotype Hawkdriver is always fighting. He like purposefully de-optimizes his other stats so he can at least get a 10. And it just hurts him when people assume orcs are dumb.
Well, not only that, just overall, like compared to playing a half orc, they're just weaker all around.
Yeah, not as good. Especially like the features a half orc gets. Because of the orc half, like orcs don't even get that. Yeah, if I was an orc, I'd feel a little gypped.
A little salty.
Yeah.
I would probably, if I was playing an orc, I would just use the half orc stats and say I'm an orc.
Yeah, no, he wants to be full orc. He's dedicated.
Nice. So Douglas wants to know what your role is, what your new role will be with Adventure League.
Yeah, so I'm still sort of figuring out. I'm not officially in the role until next week, but I've already started working a lot with Alan Patrick just to sort of just to sort of plan out some cool things that we have coming up. I know we want to revisit what exactly the Adventurers League blog does and how we use our social media channels so that we're creating content more regularly, more interesting content, and more helpful content. So, for example, maybe we would do like a video series about some really frequently asked questions we get from dungeon masters and organizers, something cool like that. I also personally really want to create more shared experiences for everyone in the league. So the recent Midwinter Festival that we did for December was something I got to work with Alan Patrick on. I was like, I can't wait until January to start doing things. So they let me collaborate on that.
So we have a question from Jim Davis of WebDM fame in the chat.
Oh, yay! Hi, Jim.
You guys have played together, I believe.
Yeah.
So he wants to know what's your favorite AL or DM's Guild adventure.
Okay. Let's see. I really, really, really like murder mysteries. So my two favorites by far are murder mystery adventures. The Artifact by I think Teos Abadia wrote that one. Is so fun. There's this I don't want to spoiler it if anyone's planning on playing it. There's this mechanic in it that's like really cool. And it's the map is even based off of the Clue board, like for the board game. So that's really fun. And then Will Doyle's Cloaks and Shadows is just like a tremendously amazing adventure. Like I've run it so many times at my local game store. When I run it, the other people are like, "Oh, I'm so jealous they get to play that one. I remember playing it. I want to play it again." That's really fun, and it starts in a really epic way.
Like I feel like I'm gonna have to check those out too. I feel like murder mysteries or mysteries in general in D&D are really hard.
I'm actually working on one right now. They're really hard to write. But I love them. If you're not really into puzzle solving, I guess that's not as much fun. I feel like they're heavy on puzzle solving and like role playing. Which are my two favorite things to do. Probably why I
You
like
know,
them.
that's one of the things I find that hangs up D&D games oftentimes is puzzles and problem solving. Like you as the DM think you're putting out something that's like easy and everyone will be able to figure it out and no one can figure it out. And then other times you're like, this one's gonna be really tough, and it's like they breeze right through it. It seems like it's always hard to find a happy medium.
Yeah. Yeah, and it can really depend on the group you're getting as well. After a while, if I like as a DM, I try to just be really attentive to whether I feel like the players are having fun, and I'll jump in and I'll let them start rolling like intelligence checks or something after a certain point, or I'll just drop some hints. Or it's nice when there's an NPC there. The NPC can help out too.
So is all your gaming Adventure League now? Or are you doing homebrew as well?
I pretty much just do Adventures League. I mean, it takes up so much of my time that that that's I don't have time for anything else. But I have recently had a chance to play more games. It's really cool that all the cool D&D stuff I'm doing has now it started like I could never play, and I just went from playing like in 5 games a week to dungeon mastering only, and now it's looped back, and people think I'm cool and are inviting me to play games with them. So recently, I played that Christmas themed adventure, and that was homebrewed, and that was like, kind of cool and different.
Nice. Have you had a chance to play around, experiment with any other games other than D&D?
A little bit. I recently played what's it called? Shadow of the Demon Lord
Mm-hmm.
in a Krampus themed adventure. And that was actually really similar to 5e, so it was easy to pick up. I think the flavor of the worlds that they've created for that game is really cool. I got to play Clockwork. And I guess in that world, clockworks they're not robots because they have souls. And it's the soul of someone who's died and it's like used in the clockwork, but they don't remember their past life necessarily. And so I played a clockwork who had the soul of a Christmas elf. And so as we were adventuring, I kept getting like this weird bits of deja vu. And then what else have I played? Oh, I really like Dungeon World. I would love to play more of that. I think that's so fun.
The problem we always face is there's far too many games and too little time.
Yeah, there's a lot of games on my wish list that I want to play, like Phoenix Dawn Command. It looks really gorgeous and has beautiful art, and I think the way you level by dying, is that just sounds cool. I want to try that for sure someday.
We had Keith Baker on and we talked about that quite a bit. I have not checked that out yet myself. And it's also different in the sense where a lot of the mechanics for a lot of games are just random, where that's more of a resource management. So you kind of, depending on the resources available, you get to pick what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Where in D&D, you got to hope for the good roll.
Yeah. The dice.
So, do you have any other games on your list?
Let's see. I one game that's been on my list for a while, just because, again, I really like the role playing aspect of D&D. Is Fate. I really want to play Fate. I hear that's heavy on role playing. But I haven't gotten anyone who wants to play it with me. We just all love D&D so much. We just want to play that.
Yeah, well, I totally get that as well. So we're actually I think we're probably going to. I'll keep you in mind if you're interested. We're going to be most likely involved in a Revlo Fate game, which is a fantasy world created by Brian Collin of Creature Curators or Curations. I'm probably butchering that. But so he's a sculptor and he sculpts these amazing monsters. Either just the bust, the head of them, or the whole thing that he creates with his son is like 7. and they make up the monsters together, and then he sculpts them, and you can see him at cons selling them. And then it's like, he'll sketch out the monster, and his son will give him the thumbs up or the thumbs down on whether to go ahead with that monster or not.
That's so cool. Yeah, I would love to play Fate.
Fate's fun. Fate Accelerated, it's fun. There's like I said, there's so many good games out there, so little time, and especially if you need like rules light, generic system, Fate usually fits the bill nicely. Let's see. Diving back into the chat, Duel 810. Well, if you're playing mostly eventually, you probably aren't going to be doing this too much. But in the home games you have played, what rule in 5e do you choose to ignore change in your game?
Oh, so that's tough because everyone I play with we're all really, really annoying rules lawyers. So we like play by the book to the extreme. But I will say in one Ravenloft game that I played, which was so harsh for so many reasons, we played with critical hit and critical fail tables. So we added that in. And that was really fun, except for the person who critical failed or their bad guy got a critical hit on them and they just died. They just died.
What are you going to do? You can't make an omelet without
yeah, Ravenloft. Harsh. There's also, if you play Ravenloft homebrew games, I'm not remembering what it's called, but I'm sure if you look up like Ravenloft Player's Guide, you'll find it. Someone has written in just amazing supplement for the Ravenloft world, and there's all these extra mechanics. Like you can get, I think they're called Dark Shadows, which is like this special flaw that your character can get. It comes with like a flaw and sort of a boon, and they're really flavorful. And we had a lot of fun like choosing Dark Shadows for each of our characters.
Yeah, that's kind of a holdover from AD&D, because like if you did bad stuff, the Dark Powers notice you. And then they try and entice you to keep doing bad stuff. You do enough bad stuff, you get your own domain.
Oh, yeah.
Which is kind of sweet, but you can't leave it, so you're kind of boned at the same time.
You can't leave it, and the domain is sort of supposed to be set up so it's like a unique torture just for you.
Yeah. That was probably that's why Soft was like one of my favorite all-time characters, where they like couldn't even torment him. He just owned it.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, he got mad when they would change up how he screwed up. One of the things we've done, and I really like, it's more recent, is we've changed how the Dragonborn breath weapon works. We've switched from action to a bonus action.
Really? Does it make it a lot more powerful, or?
It makes it useful. Like as you level, even though it scales, generally any character could do something. It has something better to do than their breath weapon, so they're not really going to use it. And at low levels, they just get to do an extra cool thing. So
yeah,
it's extra 2d12 or 2d6 damage. So it's not. I don't think it's a big deal.
Yeah, that sounds like a good change.
I guess the thing was, we just wanted people to use that ability. So, and at higher levels, we find that it would never get used. Like if you're a spellcaster, like your first level spells are better, or even your cantrips are equal or better at that point. I think. I mean, I guess because there's an area of effect, it might be a little bit. But the warrior classes, you're so much better off just hitting it with your sword.
Yeah,
for the most part.
Fair enough. Yeah, so that's a good idea. I don't play a lot of Dragonborn, so I hadn't thought of that. I do play mostly a wild magic sorceress, and so I guess I don't, obviously in Adventures League I can't really change it. I just bug the DM all the time to remember my wild magic, but I am a strong supporter of creating some sort of other system that triggers wild magic aside from your DM remembering it, because they've got enough to worry about.
Oh, I have a Dragonborn wild mage in my game, and I did find the fix for it as the DM.
And what did you change?
It's real simple. Your next time you cast a spell, your Tides of Chaos automatically resets. Just drop it to a D20 or drop the percentile dice and let me know what you got.
Cool. Yeah. I've only ever had one dungeon master who remembers my wild magic, and he had me roll every single time I cast a spell, rooting for that fireball.
Yeah, we did have that happen, and
Oh no, it hasn't happened to me yet. I'm like terrified.
I think he was like in the 3rd to 5th level range, and I think he like nearly took himself out, another party member, and it was at a bar where it happened.
Oh no! Oh, did everyone in the bar die?
So not everyone, but they did burn down the bar, the tavern,
my God.
and because he was standing right in front of the bar when it went off.
Yeah,
all the alcohol was on the other side. And
that is the best way to accidentally fireball yourself. That's epic.
Yeah. So that was great. Yeah. So I just, for me, because I know I'm going to forget, I'm just like, look, just roll every time, and your Tides of Chaos is just going to reset the next time you cast a 1st level spell or higher. And plus like the Chaos Sorcerer is kind of like the weakest of the sorcerers, I think.
You're really de-optimizing in the name of fun.
So with that in mind, I'm just like, you know what? You can have that. You can have that chance to roll with advantage as often as you want, as long as I have a chance to see you blow yourself up. Oh, the same character. The fireball was fun, but that wasn't the best one.
What's the best one?
The best one was when he polymorphed himself into a sheep during combat and wanted to flee. But I had before Vo's Guide came out, I had a couple players that wanted to play goblins, and so we kind of made goblins out of halflings, and they modeled their characters after juggalos. So they're the gobblos, and I did not even know what a juggalo was until they're like, I want to do this. Well, he polymorphed himself into a sheep, so they jumped on his back and began riding him, and were making handle animal checks to make him stay in combat and fight.
Oh my God. That is so fun. Yeah. Wild magic is where it's at.
Yeah. So that was a blast. So that's why I like the Wild Sorcerer Mage, but he's a little de-optimized, but that's okay. We can do some things like make sure you always get to have that Tides of Chaos.
Nice.
So the real Vang, how do you personally deal with overpowered characters in Adventure League?
That is a struggle for me because everyone at my table, I'm running Tomb of Annihilation for an all wizard party right now. They're all wizard multi-classed with something. So like fighter, a few levels of cleric so they can wear armor. I just I keep an eye on how they're doing in combat, and I scale accordingly. Because they are overpowered. They like their characters to feel overpowered because they like a challenge, and they like figuring out how to solve that challenge.
I'm not. Since 5e has come out, I've not been overly impressed with the CR system anyway. So I only use it loosely, and I tend to look at what the characters can do. Now, granted, if you're running Adventures League, you have to do that on the fly because you may be playing with that person for the first time and have no idea what you're looking at. But I tend to just look and see what the players have available to them and kind of adjust accordingly. So, and I've only played in, I think, one Adventure League game, and pretty much you just start playing. So it's not even like the GM looks at your character.
Yeah, some gyms do. Some of them will ask to see character sheets beforehand. Or a lot of DMs will go around and ask just like what level, what class. Some people will ask like, well, how many magic items do you have? Like magic items I should be worrying about. And then they add that to the difficulty. Because there's like different levels in Adventures League adventures that you can play at, like average, weak, or hard.
So what is your style for running games when you're at Adventure League?
Style? Oh, I've not had to think about this so much. I mean, I guess. What do you mean by style?
Like, for instance, do you do that? Do you like, hey, what magic items do I have to worry about, or do I?
Oh, okay. I guess I've mostly been running for the same table, so I every week. So I know what magic items that they have. I do like to know what like class and race and faction you are, especially if it comes in for like role playing with any of the NPCs. And my system for initiative is I make little tents where on the back that I see has like their AC and their hit points and their saving throws and all and passive perception and their name. And then the other side has their name. So I put it on top of my DM screen, which they like because then they can see who's coming up next.
Yeah, that's definitely convenient and helpful. I used to take hit points, and I at some point I just stopped, and I was just like, just let me know when you're dead. I'll tell you. I'll tell you how bad you got hurt.
Yeah. I mean, I take all of that information, but a lot of the times I'm like, there's so much stuff behind my screen. I just ask them anyway.
That's funny because on the other hand side of my screen is usually a blank piece of paper. We run our games very improv.
Cool.
Don't do a whole lot of prep.
I would love to get to that level. I'm still a relatively new DM. I just found out recently that the first adventure I DM'd ever was written by James Introcaso, which I did not know. It was a level 20 Christmas adventure. And it was a really bad idea to do that as my first thing. I was really cocky. I thought I could do it. And then my players brought druids. And it was a really mortifying experience. So I didn't, the adventure is really amazing. But I didn't DM again for months and then started when I wanted to start the Adventurers League night. So it's just been like 14 months now. But I have so much respect for people who can DM on the fly and improv. Grant Ellis, or Wise Papa Grant on Twitter, I met him at PAX Unplugged, and he DM'd like a quick little thing off the top of his head for me and my boyfriend and Chris Lindsay, and I was just enamored with his ability to just do that. That's really cool.
That is awesome. Grant's a good guy. It's actually a lot easier than you think because it really comes down to, when it's hard. It's hard when you don't have really interactive players. When you have players that want to do stuff and play the game, super easy. If you have players that are waiting for you to tell them what to do, much more difficult.
Yeah, I can see that. Players who want to interact with stuff can take something that's timed for 15 minutes in Adventurers League and turn it into an hour because they want to touch and pick up everything.
That is absolutely true. So Meet Moo has a question. What's the number one thing to do when DMing for the first time and starting a campaign? Pick up a level 20 adventure. Is that what your advice is going to be?
Do not do that. Oh God, do not. If you want to do Adventurers League, or actually you can run it and not even run it officially. Adventurers League makes really good adventures. Sorry. The first adventure for each season is usually 5 mini adventures. They're supposed to take an hour each, and they're designed to sort of be a really simple combat, and then the next one maybe adds a puzzle, and then the next one is like a puzzle in a combat, and it sort of scales up. So if you're a first-time DM, especially if you're playing with first-time players, it's a good learning experience for everybody. So I super recommend those. I've heard the starter set is actually really good too. Something I learned the more I DM'd was just not to over prep. I feel like one, I prep so much that I psych myself out. I get really stressed, but also your players are just going to do things you didn't expect anyway. And then you prepped all this stuff that you didn't need.
That is exactly how I went from a planning DM to an improv DM. My players broke me at one point. I just threw my hands in the air. I'm like, F it. I'm never gonna plan anything again.
Someone tweeted something recently where it was like, the DM says, players, I've created this amazing world for you to interact with and explore. And then the player says, I destroy it. And the DM just goes, ... Okay, roll to destroy it. And that's kind of exactly what it's like.
Yeah, pretty much. So Amy Vorpal has an awesome music video or song called DM's Lament. And if you haven't seen it, you have to check it out.
Yeah. What's I get an idea of what it's about.
Everything you just described in music form. So I can't recommend that enough. For me, like I would say, like my biggest thing for a new DM getting started is just try and relax and have fun and remember it's a game at the end of the day. Some people take their D&D really, really serious, but we're at this point I'm a grown up in my 40s playing make believe. So, when you boil it down to what it really is, the worst case, give yourself a break. The worst case scenario is it's not going to be the best game someone's ever played. So what? Keep doing it. You'll get better. We all suck when we first start.
Yeah, that's really fair. I mean, I'd totally recommend getting like a group of friends who you enjoy playing with anyway, who are going to be like fun and supportive. If you know there's people who are the type of player who really wants to interact with everything, I would recommend that because again, it's hard when you're DMing with people who um, are waiting for you to tell them what to do just because they don't seem as responsive. So as a DM, you might start to feel like, oh, are they having fun or not? And definitely give yourself a break. A lot of the times I feel like I come out of a session and I have a completely different perspective of how things went than my players did. And I hear that from my DM too, who's really amazing. We always have a really great time, but then he'll be beating himself up because he feels like he didn't run the monster right. And I was like, we couldn't tell. We don't know what the stat block is, and we all had a blast. So you're crazy.
Unless, of course, you're playing with all veteran players who have been playing for years and years, and they all have it memorized.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I yell at them for metagaming.
Yeah, there you
Your
go.
player doesn't know. Your character doesn't know that.
I usually change things at least a little bit, or I find that just remembering to describe the monsters and not saying what the monster is goes a long way. Because even then, I'll have veteran players that they're like, I think it's this, but maybe it's that. If you don't just like blatantly give it away.
Yeah. I recently played a game with a character where there were two beholders, or I ran a game, and that character had interacted with gas spores before, and so he was convinced they were maybe gas spores and like really freaked out because I just described what they were, and gas spores look like beholders. That was fun.
she can't possibly be throwing beholders at us. Surprise, sucker. Do you prefer GMing or playing?
I prefer playing. I mean, I miss playing. I'm really glad I'm getting to play more. Grant is actually going to be running a campaign where we're all pig farmers, and I'm really, really excited for that. But GMing is its whole different reward. It feels to me, it's like I'm still a player, but it does feel like a little bit more like work. My relationship with my players, we've been playing for a while, but they know me just as a DM who they met through Meetup, and they just showed up and they paid the store, so it's almost like I'm sort of like the store's employee, rather than just a friend they started rolling dice with. So it feels a little bit like work, but still really fun. Um, but some of these players have been playing with me since not this past October, but the year before, and I've seen them go from never playing D&D before, being really shy, asking every dice roll, to figuring out weird, annoying spell combos to destroy all my monsters in one round. And that's really rewarding in a way that I don't think you can get as a player.
I enjoy that too. Like I know some people get upset when the players walk through their encounters too easy. And I'm like, now I get to throw another one in.
Yeah, there's that. And then I remember as a player, whenever I'm on the other side, it makes me feel so good. Like I feel like a superhero. And so I try to remember that as a DM, that they're getting that enjoyment too.
In one of my more recent games, my Scarlet Sisterhood game. I had thrown like a half. I was so happy when Yawning Portal came out and we got chokers. It was like one of my favorite monsters from 3rd edition. And so I had like 6 of them charging down an alley at them, and the mage was like fireball. And there was just like it just rained choker bits everywhere. And you know, they lost initiative, but you know, at the end of the day, like you know, that was an awesome moment in the game for those players. They enjoyed that. So the next time I used chokers, I used like 60 of them
against choker's revenge.
That's it. Against a different party that were higher level, and and I knew like it's kind of a weak monster. Like the cleric casts blade barrier and just chainsawed like 40 of them in one shot.
Oh my gosh.
But it was great. And then, you know, I had a bunch of them jump on their pet bullet and turn it into ground meat. So, you know, that stuff, you know, it comes and it goes, and it's, you know, it's awesome when your players can feel like, you know, like superheroes when they just drop the big bad and it's super easy. I mean, I roll all my dice in the open, so they know what's going on. And even now, there's times when I'm like, should I pull this back and fudge? And I'm like, no. I was running a game for the Think Geek crew at their headquarters for Halloween, and we're on the final encounter. I'm like, ooh, I might have misjudged this one. You know, they were squaring off against the Minotaur and Mecha Minotaur, and which was just a shield guardian. And I was like, and like their tactics weren't particularly great. They're splitting their attacks, and I was like, "Oh, this could be ugly." But they won. I didn't pull any punches or fudge anything, but they won. And you know what? I'm glad I didn't rob them of that.
Yeah. Oh, it's always a little scary when the DM rolls in the open.
You never know what's gonna happen. But you know what? There's like some of our best moments have come from that. Like one of the stories we tell often is one of our early games where I rolled in the open, not because I was rolling in the open all the time, because I was being a bit of a prick and being cocky. And and they were facing this like half fiendish, half dragon Hydra. And it like literally just stepped over the city walls. And one of the players was taunting it. And it had turned like all 12 heads to face that player. And each one was getting ready to breathe when the half-elf fighter or sorcerer or fighter wizard pulls out a scroll of Flesh to Stone that he can't even read without making an ability check for it. And it's pretty high. He makes the check. He'd been saving it because he wanted to put it in his spell book at some point. But he's like, it's like now or never. So he reads it. And I was just laughing at the players. I'm like, I need like a 4 on this saving throw, guys, or higher, or a 5 or higher, something ridiculous.
Yeah.
And whatever it was, I dropped the number below it right in front of them all. And like, so the stone with like the fire, like, you know, just coming out of the mouth. And, you know, so now like that town forever has like over the one gate is the Hydra statue.
That's amazing. The dice know.
Oh, you must be from New Jersey. You said it. The dice know. That's a saying of ours.
Really?
Yeah.
Ah.
A bunch of our players at the time, they were into LARP. And one of them, I'd heard them say, what was it? A good idea, bad roll. Like was like a LARP saying. And so we reversed it because me and one of the other players, we were like kind of, at the time we were very anti-LARP, and we were very anti even letting people know we played D&D. This is probably going back like 15 years, 20 years. And so we started, they would say that, and we would say the dice no. So that we kind of like flipped it. But, you know, the hobby is great. Like we get all these great memories. You build these friendships. You know, there is no better way to spend your time.
I 100% agree.
I'm just sifting through the chat a little bit to see if we had any questions that I missed. I'm sure there were. Sorry, guys. I've been having such a great time talking to Lisa. I've been neglecting you a little bit. So, what would your dream team D&D table look like?
My dream team D&D
I
table?
know you're getting to play with some really cool people now as it is.
Um, Goodness. I mean, I had so much fun this past weekend in Maz's Christmas game. I'd just want to play with those ladies over and over again. That was my first time streaming live in a D&D game, and it feels really different. There's like a little bit of sort of an adrenaline rush knowing that there's the chat there, and they were like really active and supportive, so it was really fun. But I played with Scarlet Moth, um, Mazmataz, who, if you're active on Twitter in the D&D community, she like knits all of the little D&D animals. I don't know if you can see it, but like really far in the back, there's a chewinga on my bed, which she knit. Oh, and I have my tiny ones. She made me all these little chewinga ornaments.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So she was DMing. There was Scarlet Moth. TK joins the fray, who does a lot of D&D writing, about like the dice camera action characters and such. And then Noelle Cherie, who is in the podcast Dames and Dragons. It's also the first time I've ever played D&D with just ladies, and it was like so fun. I really want to do that more regularly now.
I I find it's a different experience. Uh, and I'm like my favorite game to run right now is the Scarlet Sisterhood, which is I DM for a bunch of ladies only because like my experience has been it's always been a bunch of dudes sitting around a table playing the game. We've never had much of a female presence at all. So I wanted to change the pace. So I just threw out an invitation and invited some people to the table. And it was kind of weird too, because I had like one of my friends ask me, he's like, yo, how do you run different? Like, how do you run for women instead of men? I'm like, I don't. I run the same games that I would always run, and they interact with the world a little bit differently for sure. But it's a blast. But on my end, I just react to whatever they're doing.
Mhm. Yeah, it was cool. It was hard for me to tell whether it was because I was playing within a group with all ladies, or if it's just these particular ladies and how they approach the game. But there was a lot more like interaction between the characters. A lot of the times, especially in AL, where you might just like sit down and you've never played with people before, it's a lot of interacting with each other through the DM. I love when characters turn and just start talking to each other. And we went into that game like as like our group interacting, and Maz just kind of controlling the world around us. And it was really fun. That is also on YouTube if anyone wants to find that on Maz Mataz's channel.
Yeah, you actually on your website you have a link to that. I had seen that.
Yeah.
Duel 810. What's it like playing with dudes? I've yet to have a male player.
Really?
That's funny. It's like Bizarro World.
That's so odd. Yeah, I've always had only played with guys. Every once in a while, there's maybe like one other lady at the table, which I love. I just love seeing more diversity in the game. Um, I don't know how to talk about what it's like playing with dudes because that's just what my default experience
Yeah,
is.
that's the
Yeah.
default. Well, I mean that is
Yeah.
a cool thing. Like there's more important. We're getting more and more diversity in the hobby, which I like it from the standpoint of even forget about diversity for a second, right? It's just the idea of if I want my hobby to grow and there's demographics that aren't really enjoying the hobby or aren't in the hobby, I just see like from the numbers standpoint, huge swaths of people that we could bring in.
Hmm. Hmm. Everyone should be playing to D&D. We must build our army.
Empire Nation, Galactic
Yeah.
Empire.
Yeah. What I love about Adventurers League and organizing and recruiting players through Meetup is that anyone could walk in the door. It's not like a self-selected. Well, I guess it is kind of self-selecting. like they need to decide whether they want to play. But it's not like I'm choosing a group of friends I already have. I'm accepting anybody at my table. And so we have people of all ages, of all different levels of experience with the game, different ethnicities, and just like completely different life experiences. And once you're sitting at the table, that all sorts of sort of melts away. We're all united just as our characters, as our party around this hobby. But it comes through because everyone's life experiences inform how they're role playing their character, how their character is interacting with people. And so the more different people you have at the table, the more different types of characters you get to see. And maybe someone approaches a situation completely differently and you learn something. I think that's so cool.
I have to agree 100%. When we did our fan meetup when we went out to LA, it's kind of the same thing. We just put out the call. We're going to be at this place this time. Come hang out. We'll run some D&D and have pizza and drink soda or whatever. And like to see like the diversity and the wide swath of different people that showed up, you know, to come hang out with us was awesome. You know, there was, you know, like you said, different ethnicities, different genders, which is way different than the experience we have. Like we've gotten a little bit of a hard time both vocally and quietly about being diverse as Nerdarchy. But the way we started, it was literally like this was kind of like our gaming table, which consisted of my brother-in-law, my brother, and a friend, you know, and one of our friends. It's just, you know, who we were around at the time and we started it with. And you know, it's funny now we're running into other people doing things online and they happen to be local. So I'm like, oh, we could definitely do some crossover stuff. You even said in in a message, you're like, hey, you, me, and James, we have to get together and do some D&D. And I'm like, absolutely. Matter of fact, I had actually invited him to James to play in our game offline that we do like once a month. And it wasn't sure if he's going to be able to make it or not. Sounds like he might be busy. It's like, oh, when I saw you from New Jersey, I'm like, I can offer Lysa his spot.
Yeah, I will totally steal James's seat.
So I will not hold you to that because I'm probably like an hour and a half, 2 hours from you.
Well, I mean, if I can even like join once or something, like I'd love to do that. Yeah, I love meeting more people, rolling dice.
But that being said, we'll definitely have to do something. I mean, we've got 2 guild adepts, we've got Nerdarchy. We're all kind of local to each other. You know, maybe if we just did an event or something, invited people to come hang out. That'd be fun.
That would be so cool. I'm getting a lot of messages where people are like, thank goodness, an administrator for AL on the East Coast. People are really excited about that. It's like all about West Coast, and so yeah, represent the East.
Cardboard Fortress says you can be the third Gobolo.
I would love to, and we can stack like Batiri goblins.
Oh my god, they already do that for their disguises.
Well, now they're just going to be slightly taller.
Yeah, that would be great. The 2 of them are ridiculous. One quick story, and then DSDJKK. Saddest moment in a campaign.
Saddest moment in a campaign? Huh. I think one of the saddest moments, I was playing in that Ravenloft campaign I mentioned, and we played Adam's Wrath. My boyfriend converted it to 5e, and all of our characters had bonded so tightly in that. And then we played, I'm forgetting the name of the module. It's in this like winter domain where it's all wolves, so many freaking wolves, and we are getting beat up by these winter wolves that are just like coming in, and eventually we're just like, okay, we have to abandon this. So we all start like running, dimension dooring or misty stepping. My character starts running. I think like I got latched onto by a wolf, and one of the characters who was like my character's best friend did something that let me escape. And he was supposed to follow after, but then he got knocked prone, and all of them are converging, and we all just start turning around to run back, and the wolves just like kill him and eat him in front of us. And the player who was playing that was like, it's fine. Like, it's okay. Like, I'll just roll another character. It's fine. I'm not upset. I'm not that upset. And all of us were just like, oh my God, a rune. So my character took his hand and is like keeping a piece of his body with her so that hopefully she can at one point bring him back. Playing Adam's Wrath, she knows a guy who can make flesh golems and grow bodies. So she's hoping to get back to Lamortia somehow. That was like a real, I think that was my first like character death I witnessed. It was life-changing.
Have you had any character deaths yet?
Me personally, well, I mean, it's not much of a spoiler. Like in the first 5 minutes of Adam's Wrath, every character has to die. So that has happened to me. And recently playing the D&D Open, which if you're not familiar with epics, I don't know how familiar you are with opens. It's like an epic where it's like multi-tables, but you're all competing against each other. So it's like a competitive D&D. That was the most brutal D&D experience I've ever had. And I super duper died and got dragged under the water by a giant crocodile as a building collapsed around me. So she ain't coming
back. that is dead on top of dead.
Yeah, like really dead. The DM wanted to make that clear, I guess.
But the Goblos, Anthony and Nicole from Cardboard Fortress, they were doing scouting. They're both ranger goblins with some other multi-class mixes in there, but they were scouting. They were scouting this mobster's like plantation house, and they got bored. So they're capturing like small woodland creatures and getting them high and throwing them over the wall.
Yes, you do.
It's what you do. So I had planned to throw in, you know, an encounter with a evil druid, but it turned out I didn't really need an evil druid. I just needed a regular druid.
Because they're throwing a little,
yeah, getting squirrels and chipmunks high and throwing them over the wall. So that game's a lot. That game is a lot of fun, and those characters are a lot of fun. They're a little hard to handle for a GM, but they're a blast.
They sound rowdy.
They're definitely rowdy. So, well, that was a fast hour. I want to thank you.
Oh my gosh, it's already 1.
Yeah,
that was really fast. I had so much fun.
I want to thank you for coming on, and thanks everyone for hanging out with us today. Really appreciate it. And if you have an open invitation to come back anytime you want, and we'll have to figure out when we can actually, in real life, get some D&D together or going on, or Fate or something.
For sure. And thanks so much for inviting me. This was really, really fun. I had a good time.
Thank you. So until next time, guys, stay nerdy.